Welcome to the Be on the Move podcast, hosted by Andrew Ronquetto. Through thoughtful conversations, we explore how innovation fuels growth for humanity, uncovering the stories and ideas that shape lasting impact. And now your host, Andrew Ronquetto.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Move. I'm really excited today to have Dr. Christiane on the episode to talk with me about empowering human potential and fostering holistic wellness to really just amplify your purpose and take actionable insights every day. Because what she is doing both in the business world, as a coach, as a professor, as an author, as a host of another podcast, The Happy Healthy Hustle, I mean, she's doing it all and still getting into the core of what it means to have balance and harmony in life. And I love that. And I'm excited for her to share this with you and show how she's helping other female entrepreneurs really just build thriving businesses without stressing themselves out, burning themselves out. And I know that doesn't mean you have to be female or male or whatever in between there. It's really just about dealing with stress and burnout. We're all feeling it across our lives. And I think we just got some great things that we can learn today. So welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. I can't wait to share some of my secrets. And of course, as always, this is going to be a really packed information session because as you heard, I am a doctor. So I'm going to really break down some cool concepts for you to not get burned out.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because I mean, the whole essence of this is really helping folks is, get after some of those core nuggets. And we like to talk about this whole idea of if maybe one episode, resonates with you, another one doesn't, but this idea that folks get to listen and hear from you and really kind of your perspective on some of these important topics that we just don't talk enough about, or when we do, we almost think about it in a negative way. Like it's not a good place to start from, I would say.
Yeah, actually, this is great. You're bringing this up. Just last night, I was taking a little Instagram story of myself, how I was working on some business related things. And it was a late evening. And I said, we don't talk about this a lot, that when you do a business, there are late nights, there are weekends, there are moments when you just want to give up. And when you get to that point, and it's like, am I driving myself crazy doing all this? And sometimes we just look at the polished Instagram pictures that are like looking Pinterest perfect office spaces, because nobody shares the messy crap that's lying on the background. They just see like the Zoom polished backgrounds, but they don't see that maybe like in my background, there's a bunch of books lying on the ground. So we really need to normalize that there is a point in our entrepreneurship journey where we're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing all this. And the more we talk about it, the less we actually get to the point of burnout.
Yeah, no, 100%. And while you have books, I mean, I've got Legos behind me on the floor. I mean, I totally get it because like you said, it's about when we're present in that moment, like we are today talking with each other, there's still that whole aspect of noise and life happening around us that when we step out of these moments of tranquility, so to say, we're jumping back into something and it can either stress us out, burn us out, or we can kind of accept and flow with it, right?
Yeah, I think that sometimes what we really need to think about, and that, I mean, you mentioned the books behind me. So I read about a book per week. I'm like really
That's awesome.
Crazy with regard to digesting knowledge. I think we are lifelong learners, and I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I'm a university professor, and so I want to also share that passion for books with my students. The one book that you just reminded me of is actually by an athlete. She's called Alex Pappas, and I can share that book with you as well. And Bravey is the name of the book. What she really shares, this athlete, is that life really comes in threes. You might have great days, you might have okay days, and then you might have some crappy days. She calls it crappy days, where you are like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe this. Yesterday was such a great day, and today is just a crappy day. But the way that you need to think about it is threes. So there will be another great day coming, there will be another okay day coming, and there might be another crappy day coming. And maybe they're not stacked up this way, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Maybe there's a 3, 3, 3, and then a 2, 2, 2, and then a 1, 1, 1.
Yeah.
But that's essentially how life works, that you need to think about, like, this will end and it shall end. And at the end of this, it's going to be great again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think like sometimes it's that journey you're on, whether it's the goods, the bads, and the uglies. I say it a little differently, like you're saying, but I think like, and maybe you talk about this a little bit just from like what I was, as I was preparing this, but you talk about like holistic success. And I figured like sometimes we got to start from the end so people can appreciate the journey of like getting to that. So I don't know if you want to share your definition of that for folks, because I feel like that ties directly into what you're talking about, the good, the bad, the ugly, in my phrase, like but just what it means to then keep working towards that opportunity.
I think holistic success is kind of like your superpower. You're stepping into yourself and making your unique value shine outside and inside. You're just feeling it. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm like totally in tune with myself. And because I'm so in tune with myself, I feel like I know what I'm good at. I know what I can share with the world. And because I know this, I really feel I am of service to others. Because think about this, all entrepreneurs, we are not just doing this to make money. We are doing this in service of others. We are helping others, elevating their lives, their businesses. And that's, I think, really what holistic wellness and holistic business is, that you are feeling, I have this unique skill and I can't wait to share this with the world.
I love that, because the thing it triggered for me as you were talking about it, and I talk about it differently, but I talk about it as purpose, and I don't think it's right or wrong either way. But I partly why I talk about it as purpose in the way you're describing it is because I think about purpose in the sense of how you show up for yourself and how you show up for others. So it ties in beautifully with the way you're describing holistic wellness and holistic success in that sense.
Oh, I love that. And I actually adore that you're using that word purpose, because I think that frequently we call one thing different words, right? So I'm a
Yep.
marketing professor, and I used to teach in the South. And when I used to teach in the South, everybody would call a soft drink a soda. And then I would come here to where I now live in the West Coast. I teach at one of the top US universities in California now. And if you were to say soda, they are thinking about this little machine that stands on your countertop and adds carbonation to water. And they don't think about a Coca-Cola or a Sprite. So now it's a soft drink, right? Or anything like that. And so I think that frequently we, depending on our culture, use a certain word to describe something and it resonates with us. And does that mean that somebody else needs to use the same word? Absolutely not. If it resonates with you, you are using a certain word, a descriptor. That's all what we ever ask about, right? So let others
Sure.
describe things differently, because I think that's the beauty of it, that you can look at something, you can see something really different, and somebody else looks at it and they see something different. But at the end of the day, it all means something to all of us. And I think that we just all search for meaning in life. You want to look back and you want to say, yeah, I did something really amazing in my life. Let me show you what that was, right? This kind
Absolutely.
of purpose that you mentioned, the legacy that we all want to leave. And I think no matter what you strive for, that's really like that superpower or your purpose word that you're really stepping into.
No, absolutely. I thought when you were gonna say like, well, we actually don't talk about soda, we call it pop, because that's
Oh my God.
like
Oh,
that takes me back to being from the Midwest and even like the Minnesota area here in the States, just of like what we call it, just even a few hundred miles from each other.
exactly.
Oh yeah, no, but I think it gets exactly to your point and why it's so important we have these types of conversations, because it's like you and I were talking about at the beginning before we got started. Sometimes the way you talk about it is very similar, but different than the way I talk about something. And the ability for somebody to connect, they might connect with one or the other, but then to help them create the connections between all of it, I think is where the power of it all is. And the conversations we have on episodes like this, in the thinking, not that it's different or unique, but in that we're creating a way of understanding it that might be different from others.
Completely. And I frequently tell my students that's where the power of learning comes in. So in my innovation entrepreneurship class, all of my students do elevator pitches. And at the beginning, they're really
Ooh.
scared, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to share something about my innovation on camera. And then I tell them, and it needs to be 90 seconds. They're like, for 90 seconds? And they think that's a long time. Until at the end of the quarter, when we work through all of my book, that, the How to Master Your Goals book, at the end, they are like, I can't fit it in 90 seconds anymore. And it's like, see what just happened? Right. All of a sudden, you have all these words to describe something really amazing. And I told you at the beginning to use these particular words, but now you have so many words that you can even fill more than 90 seconds of an elevator pitch. So this is how learning really happens, that we all of a sudden build this vocabulary and become very passionate, excited, and really stepping into our unique power of sharing something.
Yeah, 100%. And I resonate with that because I think about the journey I've been on with the company I started to almost, yeah, it'll be 2 years here come up shortly with my co-founder. And it's fascinating to see, like, if I look back at our pitch decks and I look back at the way we viewed the world and our go-to-market strategies, all these different, materials that kind of put your thought process on paper, and which is hard. Like, to your point, like, you start off the first day and you're like, I don't even know if I can put a slide together. Like, and now, we could put 20 slides together. Whether it'll resonate with somebody is a different conversation, but it's fascinating to see that evolution that occurs as you go through these experiences in life. And like you said, go through the learning experience.
Completely. And that brings up another great book that I cannot recommend more, which is called 10x is easier than 2x, right?
Okay.
Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy. And that's really something where they emphasize the power of, at the end of the day, looking back and celebrating 3 wins. And at the beginning, you're like, I don't really like to journal. I don't really want to write this down. But it is essential, like what you just talked about. You're looking at your old slide decks and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how far I've come. Because sometimes you're like, oh, I'm constantly just putting slides together. I'm constantly just putting elevator pitches together. But the reason for that is because we grow so much and there is so much learning and so much improvement that we don't take the time to really celebrate how far we've come, especially in business, where if you're running this by yourself, there's nobody that gives you like an evaluation or let's do a salary raise because you're doing such a great job. You have to do all this for yourself, right? Yep. And so it's even more important that you actually celebrate the wins at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even think I think we do it more in entrepreneurship, even though we're really bad at it. Because there's always that one more thing I got to do. I mean, but I think there's also like this tie over, because you talk about it in business. Managers and executives don't do it really well. I feel like they even sometimes do it a little bit worse because they're not in the same mindset. And I'm not suggesting they all need to be entrepreneurs. Like, the mindset here, like you're talking about, is like experiencing the journey and celebrating the wins. Like, I can't recall like when I was in that position, really doing that consistently as a manager, as an executive, as I, went through my life, because it was like, okay, I got another project I got to do. I got another thing I need to do. And it's just, this is my job,
Yeah, totally. It's that growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. There is another amazing book that I can really highly recommend. And it talks about that we frequently think, oh yeah, it's like I'm doing this certain role. I have certain job functions, but you don't think about the fact that you can actually maybe take a little detour, and that detour might end up being the next most amazing thing. And it's same as, high-end companies. If you look at Google, 80% of your job might actually follow certain job functions, but there's also time for play. And the play the 20% might actually lead to generate 80% of your profits. So the play might turn out to be the next best thing. And frequently as entrepreneurs, we are becoming really good with that play portion because we have the ability to set that ourselves, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, without it, I feel like we wouldn't pivot.
Mhm.
Like we hit a roadblock and was, I say, as I switch minds, having been in both worlds here, for a period of time each, is, when I hit that roadblock as an entrepreneur, I'm like, I don't have to just push through. I might have to pivot. I might have to adjust. I might have to rethink things. And I got to be okay with that. Like, take a little bit of the pride aspect of it out, so to say, and say it's okay. Like, look at, and back to what we've been talking about, like, look at how much you accomplished up to this point. You built something, or you did something, or you convinced somebody, like whatever it might be, those wins. But when I got in, from the corporate world or even the consulting world where I spend a lot of time, it's like you hit a roadblock and it's like, well, we're going to push through. We've already
Completely.
invested the money. We've already said we're going to spend the money on this. And I'm like, well, okay. Like it's a self-defeating mindset, because you almost kind of get down a rabbit hole of, okay, we're going to do this regardless of whether it's still the right thing to do.
Oh, I have a great story for you about this exact concept, Andrew. So I published a book last year on Amazon, and now I wrote my second and third books. And I thought, all right, I'm just going to follow the same formula, going to put them on Amazon, going to hit publish. What I did not think about is that between last fall and now, I applied for a trademark. So I have that trademark, right? I have my lawyer filed everything and we're all good. However, when I uploaded the book, Amazon doesn't know that, right? That I have the trademark for this concept called petit practice. So my book has the word petit practice in the title. And so, of course, they rejected the book. And because they were like, well, this is a trademark. And I was like, dang, I didn't even expect that they would do this. But of course they have to do this because it's a trademark term that is the title of my book. How are they supposed to know that this is something that I own? So as a business owner, I was just thinking, I'm going to upload the book. I'm just going to sell it. It's going to be amazing, And then I had to really go back and forth with Amazon, not once or twice, maybe like 20 to 50 times.
Good
And
Lord.
make sure that they understand that this is my trademark, that this is my book, that I own this. And so it wasn't just like, bam, we are selling something. So frequently in business, this is really on the behind the scenes, what people don't see. They just see that my book is on Amazon now, but they don't see the journey to get there was not a straight line at all. It was like these little rocks, these little emails, these little exchanges that's going back and forth. And it was actually just published this morning. So this morning I got the email saying, congratulations, your petit practice planner is now on Amazon. And I literally cried tears of joy because I was like, I cannot believe how hard that was. But I'm actually really glad that Amazon is doing this, that they are checking on this, because you don't want to just publish somebody else's work and have it, especially when they have a trademark for it. It is an immense amount of work for a business owner to apply for a trademark and file it.
Yes.
So I really want to honor that process. But at the same time, it's also great that Amazon is checking on it. So I got there and I'm feeling accomplished, but was it a straight line? Absolutely not.
Well, and I'm sure you felt just the frustration from it all as well, because I've gone through the process too, and it's fascinating how in depth it is. But it's like, you can see I own the company, you can see I own the trademark, you can see it's my book. You're like, guys, come on, like what else?
I know.
What else do I got to give you? A drop of blood? Like,
Yeah. Well, like, again, it's probably just because I always tell my students, sometimes when you struggle, it's because you're doing it in a certain way. And just like you said earlier, maybe you just need to tweak how you're doing it a little bit. And that might just then open doors. So it's not always like you feel if the key and it fits perfectly into the lock and it's opening the door to publication. Maybe you just need to try a different key and get there. And so what I did is I published my second book, which doesn't have the petit practice in the title and is going to be released on Sunday. And I think that they looked at that second book and really understood that, oh, she is actually a professor. She's actually owning this trademark. And then today, this planner that fits with my book, Discover Superpower, was accepted. So that's basically sometimes what we have to do. And you said like it's not always about pushing through. It's just about understanding there is a reason to it. And I think that's what the beauty of running a business is.
Yeah. And you talk about like petit practices, not just as the title of the book, but I imagine it brings in the whole concept of what it means to just really get after small, simple actions to drive your growth or business growth. Is that fair to say?
It's perfect.
Awesome. Well, there's the small abstract, right?
That is good. I love it. It's perfect. Yeah.
But I think it's like in part because I think you're leading to and what you and I, kind of talk about from different angles is like, there's so much going on in life. There's so much noise in life. And like, sometimes you need those small, even consistent actions or just actions in general to really not just get after growth, but protect yourself, almost protect your time, protect your energy, protect you from everything else happening.
Brilliant. And that's exactly what the petit practice is all about. It's about taking small, consistent steps and really going after your goals. And those could be really big, scary goals. But there is a famous saying, how do you eat an elephant? And I always wonder, it's like, why is it an elephant? But it's okay. It's a saying, right? And that is really one bite at a time, right? So you're breaking down something really big and scary by taking consistent steps. And it could be when I work with my clients, I basically tell them, you find out what those steps are. It needs to be comfortable to you because you can't tell somebody else, well, let's do this per day. Well, no, that's not going to happen because I can't tell somebody else what they need to do. I let them figure out what they want to do, right? So if it's an author that wants to write a book with me, I can't tell them we're going to write 20 pages per day because that might be absolutely crazy. Maybe it's going to be 2 pages per day. But guess what? At the end of a month, they're still growing their book. Whether it was 2 pages per day or 20 pages per day, it just depends on how quickly they want to get to their goal. But you got to break things down, and then you will really see the consistent effort is leading to that outcome.
Yeah, no, I love that because I think like for me, I think about it as like that's just in a simple way, like a very practical tool to get after stuff. To achieve the things you're trying to go for. And we talk about that a lot on this podcast of like, it doesn't mean you need to go to the gym. Like if you're all about physical fitness, you don't have to go to the gym 5 times a week.
Oh my gosh, I have such a good story for you, Andrew. You're going to love it.
Yeah, like you could take a 10-minute walk. Like, I want to hear your story, but it's like, guys, we're talking almost in some ways apples and oranges, but it's actually really just apples and apples, just 2 different flavors of it.
Oh, I love it so much. This is brilliant. Yeah. So after I had my second daughter and we got our house where we're living now here in California, and I went around. So I just gave birth to a child, didn't feel like super amazing yet, but I went around to the different local gyms and took advantage of some of the free sessions with the trainers. And I remember there was a trainer. So this is actually a learning lesson for all of us that trying to look for a good business coach. It's the same thing like finding a good trainer in a gym. So this trainer, probably right out of college, and he looked at me and I said, so yeah, I had my child. And so I want to kind of go back into physical health. And it's really important because I have 2 children. So I really need to make sure that I model myself as a role model for my 2 daughters. And so he put this plan together and it was like, we're going to work out an hour per day. And I was like, did you listen to what I just said? I said, I have 2 small children and I'm trying to get back into shape to be a role model for my children. I don't think that's a good role model. I cannot afford 1 hour per day to spend at this gym because that's 1 hour where I'm here. That doesn't count the time when I'm actually driving and leaving and changing clothing and mentally getting ready for this.
Never.
And I thought, this is really like, sometimes when we look for good business coaches, you might talk to somebody and it's like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but you absolutely do not understand who I am, what I care about, and what I can do. Because again, you need to let them figure out what is a good momentum that I can use to build my PT practice consistently, because only then it will happen. You cannot tell somebody else, let's work out for an hour per day. Let's go for runs. Because personally, I hate runs. And I'm like, you do you. But I like walks. And so maybe like I would walk 10 minutes per day, as you just mentioned. And I think that's really, really important, that there is no formula of what we need to do to get fit. The main thing is just that you do a small, consistent effort, and then you will really see progress.
Yeah, I love that, because like there's an element of that's kind of like coming to mind, which is this: you're going to start from somewhere, and it's sad, that unfortunate, early on, it's like, well, you just had a baby. So I mean, obviously I do not know that experience, but I do from my wife having kids as well. And it's not a flip the switch and I'm back at work tomorrow, whether I want to be or not. Like it's just not a thing. Like and especially from a physical perspective. So somebody who's running afterwards, I mean, kudos to you. Like I'm sure most people are probably not, but it's just fascinating, like when we kind of get into these scenarios, and like you're given that one there where it's almost like we're just not listening, and we're just kind of saying, well, here is the 5 or 10 step or 10-day plan, and you'll be successful, irrespective of everything else going on in life, to your point. Like, and coaching doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. Like, if we want to do those types of things, I had a similar experience. I was looking and working with a coach at one point, and they were saying like, we just need a couple hours a day. I'm like, okay, like I think I can fit a couple other hours in, like, because I want to do this. And I know you talk about being conscious about those things and how you use your time, but I also got to get the other side of it, which is it wasn't 1 to 2 hours a day. It was more like 3 to 4 hours a day, which was way over my limit. It wasn't going to happen. And so this whole understanding of like, whether you're a practitioner or a coach, understanding like, how to address that in your own practices, and not just be reactive to it, but kind of proactive to it, to say like, look, this is what I'm really asking of you, I think is essential. And that's an essential mindset for everybody in life, almost like thinking about what it's going to take to do it. Cause like you said, it's not just an hour. I got to drive, I got to change, I got to shower, it's 2 hours on a good day, probably.
Completely. And I always think about when you go to a restaurant and you see the waiters pass by with that tray, and they have a bunch of dishes on there and glasses and maybe full of water. That's how I think about my life, that I always have a plate and I have to balance all these things out, right? But at some point, your plate is full. So you can be the best waiter in the world, but at some point you're like, you know what? I can't add anything. I have to take something off. And that's in your life as well. When you add on that 1 or 2 hour, your life is not magically expanding into a 25-hour day. So something else will have to go. And unfortunately, most likely as an entrepreneur, it might be leisure time. It might be time with your family. It might be time that you spend doing something else that you really cared about. And so it's so important to have these boundaries where you're like, all right, if I say yes to this, what is it on my plate that I need to say no to?
Right.
Because I'm going to add this on. And I always think with my clients, I like the word of adding. I don't like the word restricting. So sometimes people come to me, they're like, oh yeah, I really want to get into health and I want to cut down on calories and I want to get to a certain body weight. And I'm like, okay, so let's just add things. And then we worry about what the body weight later, the numbers really show, because we just add things, we just add joy, and then everything else will just fall into place because we're actually having fun doing it, right? And we're not just thinking, well, I can't eat this right now because it's not going to lead to long-term and sustainable results. So with your little tray, if you want to operate a successful business, you have to think a little bit, is like an hour reasonable, perfect, but where does this hour come from? And then really look at your day and figure out, all right, so maybe instead of driving to the gym and back, which was an hour, I work out at home. And then I got my hour right there. And I save money on the gym because I have to buy this microphone and this whatever for my podcasting journey. So the gym money will go towards my podcasting journey. So that's how you have to think a little bit about. You can't just add things. You have to think a little bit. Maybe it's more like a shift I have to do, and then the shift will actually be something much more sustainable.
Yeah, and that I'm so glad I'm not alone in saying that, because I talk about like all the practices in life, and that's what you were saying too. And I brought it into the work conversation for folks time and time again. And I feel like a big part of the burnout happening today in work, just that one portion of our life, which is a lot for a lot of people out there. So it's not one to discount for sure. But that one portion of life, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, is not the issue. There are three competing priorities that generally don't align. What the company expectations of you are, what your manager's expectations of you are, and if you're an entrepreneur, your customers, and then what your day-to-day expectations are, and what is coming in the door for you to get done. And it is fascinating for me to see how disconnected those three are.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's like nearly like, going from the broad perspective going in and really figuring out, does that fit who I am? Can I really bring something in where I'm not feeling I'm like taking on a role like an actor, but I'm actually really standing behind the product, behind the company values, and really sharing with my clients authentic and realistic expectations. So important, because you don't ever want to feel like you are salesy. You just want to talk about something, about a product and about an experience, and give testimonials that are actually based on transformation. And I always tell my students that the more a product really transforms somebody's life, the less you have to feel you're writing a salesy elevator pitch, but you're just essentially sharing what the customers do. And by sharing that, you're already selling the product right and left. So this soft selling is so much easier for us than the hard selling. And at the same time, it really makes you in tune with the company values as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're kind of coming to the end here, and I know it's got a lot of things kind of sparking in my mind, but I don't know if there's anything from your side you want to share with folks that's like, oh yeah, we talked about X, but think also about Y. And love to hear if there's any last moments or tidbits, takeaways folks can really get from this.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier the books that I wrote, and I have my podcast as well. So my podcast, The Happy Healthy Hustle, is actually featured in my upcoming book. So
Very cool.
I talk a lot with my students about different learning styles. Some of us like to read, some of us like to listen, some of us are more visual learners. And so my book really, Discover Your Superpower, ties that in. So it features some of the amazing guests of my podcast that share their superpower. And that might spark something in you, because it's not always me saying, this is what maybe your superpower is, but it's 25 other people that share what their superpowers are. So you can listen to that. They're in my book. There's this interactive aspect where you can listen to them. You can watch them, right? For the visual learners, there's YouTube videos. And of course, I also have games in my book worksheet. So it's super interactive. And I'm really excited to share that, because I feel we all can do an amazing job in stepping and discovering our own superpowers and letting our own light shine a little brighter in the world.
Yeah, I mean, and that is a perfect way to end this, because I think like if you know your superpower, it's going to give you energy, and it's going to give you motivation, and it's probably going to help you make some decisions as well at the end of the day too. Like what am and I'm not going to do. And I love that you're talking about sharing it with folks from their different learning styles, whether you're a reader, a visual, an audit, I mean, I see myself as a visual and an experiential learner, so it's helpful that you're meeting people where it's at. It's very cool. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. Thank you. And we'll put this in the show notes for sure. Because I think people, if you don't know it out there, what your superpower is, or you feel like it's evolving a little bit, you should check it out.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah. And thank you so much for coming on. And thank you for everybody that's been listening as well. What I take away from this, and I think, it's important for everybody to just kind of take that one moment of reflection at the end of a podcast episode and say, what can I do a little bit differently? And I would say, the thing for this week in our conversation, which I've really appreciated and loved, is that there are a lot of practical tools out there to help you get after your aspirations. And I think that one key step you can take is starting to discover what those tools are and which one you feel might help you if you feel like you're stuck. So I'm going to throw this out there, whether it is checking out, the new book that we're talking about here around your superpower, or it is looking at other practical ways that you can really get at the things that are most important in your life or support those aspirations. I think that's the thing to take away from our conversation today. And I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you again, Christiane, for being a part of this journey that we're on with this podcast. And we'll talk to everybody again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Move. Don't forget to follow us, rate the show, and share with others. If you're ready to dive deeper, visit us at beyondplatform.com. Catch you next time.